So as in my introduction, I direct Arts and Democracy, which is about participatory democracy, arts and culture, social justice, and Naturally Occurring Cultural Districts New York, which is really about engaging the power of indigenous culture in communities as a powerful force for civic engagement and equitable development. So right from the start, when the transition came along, we were very eager to be at the table to have our voice be heard about arts and culture. We wanted to frame it because so often arts and culture gets framed outside of the progressive framework, or it's often a discussion about we need more money for the arts for our organizations, and it becomes very self-focused. So we were eager early on to say arts and culture for a just and equitable city, and we wrote a brief called that. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. I bet a bunch of you are sitting here saying, yeah, right. Because this kind of notion of arts and culture being elitist is very deeply rooted in some of folks. And I know this from working in neighborhoods that, you know, even though people engage in culture every day, they may feel when you say arts, it's that cultural institution over there that has nothing to do with my life. Another, example is that I was part of the 21st Century City for All group that had a series of roundtables to create a book and a progressive agenda for New York to influence the transition. And my first day there at one of the roundtables, somebody said to me, which issue are you with? And I said, arts and culture. And they said, oh, wow, you have a hard time since arts and culture is the thing that's causing all the gentrification in the city. So, and then we have the challenge of our own arts community. When we wrote this brief, Arts and Culture for a Just and Equitable City, one of the things we called for was cultural equity. And that freaked some people out. I started getting calls from people who would never talk to me before, thinking that somehow we were trying to take their money away from them. And, my response was sort of, guys, we're in an equity moment. At least you got to pretend to care about equity. But cultural equity is a very charged phrase for some folks in our sector. So the other side of it is we put this brief out. We wanted to get it to the transition teams before they met. We had one weekend, basically, to get it together and get signatures. And we got 100 signatures from people of all different kinds of progressive groups in one weekend. So I don't want to overemphasize, there's also lots of support for this idea. Our set of values, besides the idea that arts and culture is in really embedded in progressive agendas and in our communities, I would say some of the other values of our work is the recognition of art and culture being broadly defined. So we're talking about culture very broadly, including the dancers in the subways. And what's really important to us is that people have a say in the decision making that impacts their lives. And that, I guess underlying it all is a really deep respect for the wisdom of people in communities and their ability to say what they need and determine for themselves what change is needed. So it makes it a little hard for me to talk about Bill de Blasio, because for me, it's a question of what's a progressive city, not what's a progressive mayor, and what can create the conditions by which people can self-determine change and gain the agency they need and the ability they need to make it. And to add arts and culture to that, to be able to express their creativity in a way that can make change. So as for the mayor, I can say a couple things. There was a concern from the arts community that his agenda didn't really include arts and culture. He had a little bit about arts education. And there was a concern that he didn't name a cultural commissioner for a long time. A lot of that kind of died down because he picked a really good commissioner, Tom Finkelpearl, who was the former director of the Queens Museum of Art, and whose he kind of is the guy that can speak to everybody, because he is very much a populist around arts and culture, but he ran a large institution. But his manner and his way of working is being very open, and that's something that a lot of us hadn't experienced before. The other thing that really came across that we're really happy about is that in the past administration, there was a lot of attention to tourism and economic development from top down related to arts and culture, and not much talk about neighborhoods or about the social impact of the arts. And this really was made very clear. We were delighted to hear Mayor de Blasio at the announcement of Tom Finkel-Pearl talk about how he thinks that you can't have a flourishing democracy without a strong cultural sector, without the ability of artists of all kinds to express themselves, to challenge us, to make us think, to provoke us. So we heard that, and we heard what he and the commissioner said around the social impact of the arts and the importance of integrating the arts and other agencies and other activities in the city, and felt encouraged by that. I would say the things, well, I have to say, you know, you get really excited at these announcements and everybody's hugging and kissing each other and being very happy, and then, you know, reality hits and bureaucracies take long times to change. And, you know, what actually can change? I mean, I think in the cultural sector, this is why a lot of people don't work with the government, because they can see change happening quicker, or in a way they could better see, you know, put their hands around it, either on a community level or in a movement building way. Some of the things that have happened is $23 million was spent on arts education. That's a good thing. I mean, it's good to have that. And it was the mayor, but it was really also the comptroller, Scott Stringer, who put out a report saying there's inequity in opportunities for arts education for our kids. And this was a response to that. I would say other good things that happen is that good things for New Yorkers are good things for artists. You know, they're New Yorkers. So if there's more affordable housing, that's going to be a good thing. If there's pre-K for their kids, you know, artists have kids. And if you can get sick days, that's a good thing too. The ID card issue is interesting because the arts community was brought into that by the commissioner asking the large institutions in the city to give a bonus, some kind of, you know, membership bonus. That I think they're still working out what the benefit is if people have the city ID card, to make everybody want to get the card because you get to go to the museum. I think that's great, and I think it's great to ask the city institutions that get a lot of money from the city to step up and be good citizens that way. I also think that there should be a recognition for the neighborhood groups that have been working, that's part of our mission to work with immigrant communities and be allies on this, and that there should be a recognition of that work as well. Okay, so the last, you know, on the police issues, I'll say that's really interesting. I just want to sort of work off of what you said. We're developing a number of different sets of policy recommendations, and one of the ones our group is really excited about is called Culture is Not a Crime. And we're really, you know, I mean, do folks know 5 Points, that area where that was painted? That was, you know, an amazing place where people painted, and it was non-sanctioned. There's a lot of art that happens in this city that's not sanctioned. What can we do to not criminalize it? What can we do to actually celebrate it? And to take that one step further around the work we're doing around space, why do we have to spend so much time getting access to do things in parks or into our public civic spaces? You know, how can we work with the city to create opportunities to truly have civic spaces that creativity can flourish in, and you don't have to spend days and days and days trying to get permitted or being thrown out. So I need to wrap it up. I think the last thing I'll just put out there is that the topic of civic engagement, and maybe I'll just say we can talk about that in the discussion, because I wanted to talk about what our recommendations would be for the city really embracing the idea of the role of artists in civic engagement when things happen like Sandy, or when things happen like a young man is shot and killed in Ferguson. Artists are there. They're very engaged, and they're very much part of coming together and dealing with hard issues. How can we really promote that idea and not be afraid of what happens, but actually see that as a real asset for the city?